There are moments when people look at you and think you're easy to push around. Not because you seem incompetent, not because you've done something wrong, but simply because you don't react. You back down in an argument and they call you weak. You stay silent when wrongly accused, and they think you're afraid to speak up. You walk away from a fight, and they assume you've lost. And then you ask yourself, maybe I'm just too soft. Or worse, did I allow people to disrespect me? If you've ever asked yourself that, then this video is for you. Not to teach you how to fight back, not to make you sharper or more aggressive, but to help you understand. Silence isn't weakness, it's awareness. And that kind of awareness, it's the very thing that makes you no longer need to raise your voice to be respected. Have you ever noticed people who often get disrespected? It's not because they lack value, it's because they don't know how to draw the line at the right moment. A colleague who constantly interrupts you during meetings, a family member who hides hurtful comments under jokes, a partner who repeatedly downplays your feelings and then says, "I was just kidding." It always starts small. And if you don't speak up, people slowly get used to crossing your boundaries without fearing they'll lose you. But I'm not here to tell you to toughen up. Stoicism never encourages impulsive réactions. In fact, this philosophy teaches the opposite, to stay calm even in chaos, to conserve your energy and focus only on what you can control. And the one thing you can always control is your reaction. People may insult you, people may ignore you, people may think they're better than you, but they can't take away your dignity unless you hand it over to them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." So, instead of retaliating, you just need to be unlike them. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. You just stand there with silent defiance and a steady gaze. No words, but enough to let them know, you can't shake me, because I'm the one in charge of my own mind. I know it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because when we're disrespected, our first instinct is to fight back. We want to shout for fairness. We want to explain everything to prove we're right. We want to clap back hard so they'll think twice. But here's the truth. Every time you react emotionally, you're playing their game. You've stepped into the arena they've set up. You're burning your energy while they just stand back and watch you unravel, get angry, and hurt yourself even more. Stoicism teaches us something counterintuitive. Not every insult deserves a response. Sometimes, silence is the clearest form of rejection. Silence says, "I'm not here to be validated. I'm here to live in alignment with who I am." Someone once asked me, "What should I do when I'm being disrespected, but I don't want to ruin the relationship?" My answer is simple. You don't need to scream, but you do need boundaries. You don't have to be aggressive, but you must have self-respect. And you don't need to say a lot just to be heard, because sometimes a calm look, a silence full of strength, is enough to make someone realize, this is not someone I can keep disrespecting. If you're still here, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're searching for a way to respond, a way that protects your heart without losing yourself in the process. And if that's true, then I invite you to keep walking with me. In the parts that follow, I won't just talk about philosophy. I'll walk you through real-life situations where people held on to their dignity without losing their calm, where they used eye contact, silence, distance, not as tools of resistance, but as declarations of how they choose to live, not to win against anyone, but to remind themselves, I am worthy of respect, even if I never demand it. Have you ever noticed, in any group of friends, the person who gets interrupted the most is often the one who speaks gently? In a family, the one who gets hurt the easiest is usually the one always trying to keep the peace. At work, the person who keeps getting extra, thankless tasks, is often the one who complains the least. Why is that? Why is it that kind people are often the ones who get the least respect? Is it because this world only values noise, or is it your quietness that makes people assume you have no voice? Let me tell you a small story. Once, I was working in a quiet coffee shop in the middle of the day. Next to me sat a woman probably in her mid-30s with someone who seemed to be her mother-in-law. They weren't arguing, no yelling, just soft words, but sharp as blades. How much does your husband make that you spend like that? You shouldn't work that late. Your husband has to wait for dinner. You should learn from your cousin. She's gentle, respectful, never talks back. The daughter-in-law said nothing. She just looked down, nodded occasionally, smiled politely, trying to keep the air peaceful, but her eyes couldn't hide the exhaustion. I didn't know who they were, but I knew one thing. She wasn't weak. She was just trying not to break the fragile peace she believed mattered more than her feelings. And I think many people live exactly like her. You don't react, not because you're wrong. You're just tired of arguing with people who don't want to understand. You're just trying to keep things calm in a world that often mistakes silence for surrender. Stoicism teaches us to be rational but not cold, to be patient but not passive, to be calm but never at the cost of dignity. And here, I want to say one thing clearly. Kindness is not the same as weakness. Politeness doesn't mean everyone has permission to cross your boundaries. Here's the issue. The world can't read your heart. They don't see how many times you've tried to keep the peace. They don't count how often you've stayed quiet just to avoid hurting others. They don't realize that your silence isn't agreement. It's exhaustion. And because they don't see it, they assume you don't feel anything. That's when they start to joke with your feelings, without any fear of losing you. So, if you've ever asked yourself, why does the more I endure, the worse people treat me? Why does my silence only make them louder? Why does kindness still get disrespected? Then, know this. It's not your fault, but it is a sign that you need a different way to respond. Not to become harsh, not to turn cold, but to start holding on to some of your energy to protect the boundaries within you. There's an ancient truth in Stoicism, spoken by Epictetus. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them, and that includes how you see yourself. If you believe your role is to always keep the peace, you'll always be the one to lose something first. If you believe that silence is the only way to hold on to relationships, you'll lose yourself before you keep anyone else. Because the truth is, you cannot save a healthy relationship by constantly harming yourself. You need to understand this. Kindness cannot be a reason for others to cross your lines, and you should never turn submission into a habit just to keep a perfect image that makes others comfortable. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is to pause, stand tall, and say, "That's enough." You don't need to scream. You don't need to be angry. You just need to be clear so others know. This is the limit. And if they don't respect that limit, then your next silence won't be tolerance. It'll be a conscious retreat from a place of clarity. I know it's hard to change how you react after years of trying not to upset anyone, but you can start small. A steady gaze when someone disrespects you, a silence that doesn't bite back but doesn't allow the wound either. A moment where you stop explaining because no one is truly listening. And if you're still here, maybe you're no longer interested in the kind of silence that makes you smaller. Maybe you're looking for a silence that comes with boundaries, dignity, and quiet strength. Keep walking with me. In the next part, I'll tell you how a silent stare can flip the entire dynamic of a conversation, a gaze with no anger, no words, but enough to make someone truly see themselves in the mirror. You'll realize Sometimes we don't need to win against anyone. We just need to make sure we don't lose ourselves. There's a kind of silence that is no longer avoidance. It's a declaration, not loud, not angry, no need for explanation, just a stare, calm, almost cold, and a silence that lasts longer than most people are comfortable with. Someone once asked me, if I don't speak up, don't react, don't argue, how will people know I'm upset? The answer is, you don't need them to know. You need them to feel it. And sometimes a long enough stare says more than any words could. I once used this just once, in a meeting that lasted nearly 3 hours. That day, I was presenting a proposal not perfect, but solid. There was this one guy, a middle manager, who kept interrupting me, cutting in, dismissing everything, not with reason, but just to prove he knew better. At first, I stayed polite. I paused. I smiled. I said, "Go ahead." But by the third time, I looked him straight in the eyes. No frown, no tight lips, no expression, just eye contact. No blinking, no flinching, no exit for excuses. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and I said nothing. The air began to shift. People in the room who had been staring at their screens slowly turned toward us. He faltered, his voice lowered, and strangely after that stare, he never interrupted me again. I didn't push back. I didn't try to beat him with arguments. I simply showed him through silence that I was fully present, and that I saw him clearly, and that alone changed everything. Why is the silent stare so powerful? Because it's something disrespectful people are not prepared for. They're used to taking control and others brushing it off. They're used to mocking and others just quietly accepting it. They're used to making others feel small, but rarely do they get held accountable. And when you calm, firm, unmoved, hold your gaze, you become the mirror they never expected to face. In Stoic philosophy, there's a quality that's held in high regard, ataraxia, the state of unshakable calm amidst disturbance. Not the cold kind of I don't care, but the clear kind, I see what's happening, and I choose not to be ruled by it. When you hold your gaze without flinching, you are practicing ataraxia in its most embodied form. You're saying, without saying, I see you. I see everything you're trying to hide behind your words, but I won't play your game. Some may ask, isn't that just being passive? No. Passive is when you let people walk all over you and you don't even notice. But when you see it clearly and still choose calm strength over reaction, that's control. Control over your energy, control over your dignity, control over how far others are allowed into your emotional space. The silent stare isn't just for them. It's for you. It's a way of telling yourself, I don't need to react to prove anything. I can stand here and still be as solid as a mountain. You know what happens next. Not everyone will apologize. Not everyone will change immediately. But almost always, they'll become more cautious around you. Not because you're threatening, but because they no longer know how you'll respond, and that unsettles them. The truth is, people who constantly disrespect others usually only do it to those they think won't push back. They rarely cross lines with someone who carries quiet strength. They rarely make jokes go too far with someone they can't read. And the silent stare is how you make yourself unreadable. If you've never tried it, try it once. Next time someone offends you, cuts you off, or says something that stings, instead of reacting, pause. Look at them. No tension, no bowing, no performance. Just look as if to say, I see you, and I'm not stepping back. You'll be surprised by how heavy that silence becomes. Not for them, but for you, because when you realize you can hold your ground, even in the face of disrespect, you no longer fear being underestimated Because you've learned something even more important than being respected. You know your worth without needing anyone to confirm it. If you've made it to the end of this part, I believe you no longer want to live the old way. You no longer want to be silent in resignation. You no longer want to be overlooked just because you're gentle. You want a different kind of presence. One that makes people rethink their behavior with nothing more than a stare. And that's when you step into a different kind of energy. The energy of someone who no longer needs to prove themselves because they've already claimed their power from within. If you're ready, the next part will be about strategy 2, silence not as submission, but as a way to conserve your energy, a different kind of silence. Not so others can do whatever they want, but so you can stay firmly in control, even in a world that tries to pull you into its chaos. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you knew, the more you speak, the more clarity you lose? Someone keeps talking with no respect, not tact. You disagree. You have every reason to respond, but still, you stay silent. Not because you've lost, but because you know, no matter what you say, it won't be heard. There's a kind of silence that isn't weakness. It's a deliberate choice to preserve your energy for something more worthy. That silence isn't to let them win. It's so you don't lose yourself in a meaningless exchange. I've been there. At a gathering, an old friend kept joking about my career path. She laughed loud, saying, "My friend's a dreamer, making Stoic content like people actually care." Others laughed along, not with bad intentions, but no one stepped in. I could have defended myself. I could have talked about the projects I've done, the people I've helped, the heartfelt messages I've received from viewers, but I didn't. I just looked at her, smiled softly, and turned to someone else. Changed the topic, not because I had nothing to say, but because I saw no reason to speak, in a place where people didn't come to understand, but only to get attention. Stoicism doesn't teach you to swallow your anger. It teaches you this truth: reaction is a luxury. Not everyone deserves it. When you choose silence, you're saying to yourself, I won't give this person power over my energy. I won't let my emotions be dragged into a performance they created. I'll save my words for someone who actually listens. We've been taught that strength means speaking up, explaining, proving. But the truth is, the strongest person isn't the one who speaks the most. It's the one who knows when to speak and when to keep their peace. In the Enchiridion, Epictetus wrote, "If someone does wrong, it's their business. Don't waste energy on what's not in your control." And an insult, that's something you can't control. But your response, that's always yours. Some might say, isn't silence just letting them walk all over you? No, silence, at the right time, doesn't open the path for them. It pulls you out of their game entirely. You're not their audience. You're not their opponent. You're just someone who's no longer interested in meaningless conflict, and that leaves them stranded. When you don't react, they're forced to hear their own words echo in a silence that doesn't validate them. No applause, no argument, no thrill of domination, just them and the emptiness of their own noise. And very often, it's your silence that becomes the beginning of their self-reflection. But more than that, silence is for you, to preserve your inner clarity. Have you noticed, every time you argue with someone who doesn't want to understand, you get tired. Every time you defend what's right, you lose touch with your own peace. Every time you try to explain to someone who's just waiting to dismiss you, you feel like sinking in quicksand. And then you realize, some truths only need to be known, not proven. Silence isn't about keeping peace with others. It's about keeping peace with yourself. Maybe they won't understand you, but you understand you. And sometimes that's enough. Still unsure. Next time someone says something unfair to you, don't react right away. Don't rush to defend. Don't rush to speak. Just pause. Take a breath. Let the silence stretch, like a space they can't fill. Then watch. The air shifts. The rhythm of the conversation breaks. And you, rise above it, lighter, calmer, stronger. I know. Many of us don't stay silent by nature. We do it because we've been hurt for speaking. We've been dismissed, cut off, ignored, and so we retreat to avoid more pain. But silence, in Stoicism, is not about hiding. It's about standing still, in a place no one else can disturb. If you're training a new kind of strength, this is the first step. Silence, at the right moment, is the mark of someone who's mastered their inner world. No need to prove, no need for revenge, just the calm knowing, no one gets to steal my peace with a careless word. And when you hold that silence, you'll be surprised. People start to change their tone. They begin to hesitate. They begin to actually listen, not because you shouted louder, but because your silence suddenly carried more weight than any speech could. In the next part, I'll talk to you about something that seems simple, but is a turning point for inner freedom. Stop explaining. You don't have to prove why you live the way you do. You just have to live that way and be at peace with your choice. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, not from conflict, not even from pain. It comes from constantly having to explain yourself. In a world that questions everything you do differently, why do you choose to be alone? Why aren't you married by now? Why would you leave a stable job for something no one's sure about? Why are you so quiet, so distant, so low profile? Each question sounds like curiosity, maybe even concern, but behind it, there's often a hidden expectation. You should live in a way that feels reasonable to them. I've experienced this firsthand. When I left my old job to pursue writing and sharing about philosophy and inner life, people kept asking, "What do you even earn writing those things?" Leaving everything just to sit and reflect. Can that feed a family? Are you sure you're not just running from real life? At first, I explained. I shared my plans. I expressed my belief. I tried to prove myself through what I'd achieved. But the more I explained, the more I felt like I was asking for permission to live my own way. One day, I stopped. When people asked, I just said, because I want to, because it feels right to me, because I feel at peace. No more presentations. No more justifications. No more convincing anyone. And strangely, the less I explained, the clearer I felt inside. There's a key Stoic principle. No one else can live your life, so why should you live it through their eyes? We don't lack reasons. We just lack the permission from ourselves to stop needing to explain. Why do we keep explaining? Because we want validation. We want to be understood. We want others to know we're not being reckless. But in doing so, we place the authority over our lives in someone else's hands. You have the right to move at your own rhythm, even if it looks strange to others, even if no one understands, even if it seems unreasonable in their eyes, because in the end, you are the one responsible for your life. Imagine this. Someone is walking through a desert. They choose to head north because they have a map. But a bystander, who knows nothing about the journey, keeps asking, "Why not go east? I see light that way." Are you sure that's the right direction? Who told you to go that way? If the traveler stops to explain, they'll get lost. And in life, it's the same. Every time you stop to explain your path to someone who isn't walking it, you drift further from your own compass. You can be kind, but you're not obligated to make everyone understand your journey. You can listen to feedback, but you don't need to prove to anyone that you're not wrong. In one of Marcus Aurelius's writings, he says, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And I believe that applies to all of us. You don't need to explain why you choose what you choose. You just need to live it, firmly and peacefully. Your consistency, over time, will answer everything. I know some of you reading this feel a pinch inside, because you've always tried to keep peace, tried to avoid upsetting anyone, tried to explain, so no one would misunderstand you. I understand. I've been there too. But remember, truth doesn't need to be agreed with to still be truth. And peace doesn't come from others understanding you. It comes from you understanding yourself. Next time someone asks, "Why are you doing that? Who gave you the right to choose this way? Do you think you're better than others?" Take a breath. And if you feel no need to explain, don't. Let your silence be the clearest answer. You're not being rude. You're simply protecting something sacred, your inner integrity. I'm not writing this to encourage coldness. I'm not saying to ignore every opinion. I'm just reminding you, explaining is a choice, not a duty. And if you always feel obligated to justify every part of your life, then maybe, just maybe, you've let others steer your direction for too long. If you're ready to start again, begin with one simple sentence. I choose this because it feels right to me. Then stop. No more speeches. No more convincing. If someone truly wants to understand, they'll ask more, with respect. And if they don't, they're not worth your energy. When you stop explaining, you don't become arrogant, you become mature. And you're telling yourself, I'm strong enough not to ask for permission anymore. I don't need anyone's approval to live the life I've chosen. In the next part, I'll share with you a sacred boundary. 1. No one should cross if you truly respect yourself. Keeping distance, not out of hatred, but because you know who deserves to be close. We often grow up with a beautiful belief that if someone matters to us, we should keep them close, no matter what. Family, friends, colleagues, lovers. Once you've shared memories, helped each other, walked together, you're not supposed to let go. And because of that, many people are still holding on to relationships that are no longer healthy, no longer supportive, no longer built on basic respect. Only the repetition of being belittled remains, and the fear of loss if we walk away. I once had a friend like that. We were close since college. We went everywhere together, shared every struggle. I thought we'd be friends for life. But when I started to change, slowed down, chose a deeper way of living, she began saying things that felt off. Stop overthinking everything. Quit the philosophy. Be practical. I'm just joking. Don't be so sensitive. At first, I let it go. I thought close friends are meant to accept each other. So I gave in. I explained. I tried to meet her halfway. But the more I stayed close, the more I lost the clarity I had built. Every meeting became something I braced myself for. Being teased, ignored, or subtly dismissed, all in the name of harmless fun. And then I decided not to meet her anymore. Not because I was angry, not because I hated her, but simply because I had realized being close was no longer good for either of us. In Stoic philosophy, there's a crucial truth. You can't control how others treat you, but you can choose who gets to be close. Distance is not punishment. Distance is how you restore inner order. I know this might sound cold, because society teaches us to be forgiving, to be patient, to honor the bond. But forgiveness doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Patience doesn't mean losing your boundaries. And honoring a connection shouldn't come at the cost of your inner peace. You don't need to cut people off completely. You can simply shift their place in your life. From the one I share everything with, to an old friend I may cross paths with again someday, from someone I meet weekly to someone I occasionally greet from afar. No announcements needed, no big explanations, just a quiet adjustment of distance so you no longer get hurt. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." You don't need others to agree with your choices. You just need to live in alignment with what you know protects your clarity. There's a hidden fear many of us carry. If I become distant, people will think I'm arrogant, cold. But do you know what's scarier? Living close to those who constantly make you feel small, invisible, or never enough. Until one day, you forget your own worth, because you let someone else define it for too long. Ask yourself, is there someone in your life that every time you see them, you feel the need to emotionally prepare? Someone who makes you feel you have to shrink just to be accepted. Someone who often says hurtful things, then excuses it with, "It's just a joke." If so, then distance is the gift you should give both of you. Keeping distance isn't because you no longer love. It's because you want to protect the love that's still intact. Maybe one day you'll both grow, understand each other more, and reconnect at a new frequency, or maybe not. But either way, you'll still have your self-respect. I know, keeping distance isn't easy, especially with people who once meant so much. But please remember, love is not an excuse for repeated harm. Close friends, family, lovers, if there's no longer mutual respect, they shouldn't stay in the closest spaces of your life. You're not abandoning them. You're simply choosing, "I will no longer allow anyone so close that they can damage my soul." And when you start stepping back from those who don't respect you, you'll find space to welcome those who see your worth, without needing you to prove it. Sometimes, distance doesn't break a relationship. It saves it from falling over the edge of harm. In the next part, I'll share the final, and perhaps the most important practice, lifting your head high. Not to prove you're better than anyone, but to remind yourself that you no longer have to bow just to keep any relationship. There's a very real moment when you walk into a room and you already know someone will look down on you. There will be judging eyes, backhanded comments disguised as jokes, people waiting to see your reaction so they can nod and say, "See, just as I thought." You're not unfamiliar with this feeling. It no longer hurts the way it once did, but still, you know you're being tested, and what you need isn't a sharp comeback, not a mic drop line. What you need is something much simpler, to walk in and not bow your head. It might sound like posture, but it's more than that. The posture of your body reflects the posture of your inner self, and anyone who's ever been hurt by disrespect knows this deeply. We've all hunched our shoulders, avoided eye contact, spoken in softer tones, as if our very presence was a burden. No one told us to do that, but we learned to shrink just to be accepted. And one day, you'll come to a vital decision. Do I want to keep showing up in life like I don't deserve to be here? Or will I start standing tall? Not to challenge anyone, but to honor myself. I once watched a middle-aged woman, not flashy, not powerful, yet her presence shifted the energy of an entire room. She didn't smile much. She didn't raise her voice. She simply walked upright, eyes forward, shoulders relaxed, but never lowered. And when someone said something disrespectful, she didn't react. She simply looked, nodded lightly, and turned away. The strange thing, no one dared push it further. She didn't need to prove anything, but everyone felt it. This is someone who knows who she is, and isn't easily shaken. Stoicism doesn't teach you to pretend. It teaches you to know your inner worth, and live from that place. When you stand tall, you're not just respecting your body, you're sending a signal to your mind and the world I am grounded. Holding your head high isn't about appearing superior. It's about not letting anyone mistake you for someone who's willing to accept less than you deserve. You don't need to glare. You don't need to stomp. You just need the calm in your walk. To set a silent boundary that warns, do not cross. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Dignity consists not in possessing honors, but in knowing you are worthy of them." You don't need applause. You don't need praise for being resilient. You just need to live with a posture that says, I won't trade my self-respect just to be accepted. You'll be surprised. Just by standing tall, looking people in the eye, staying silent, and walking without flinching, people around you will know. You're not someone they can manipulate or humiliate easily. In moments where you're being disrespected, that becomes your strongest invisible shield. I know. It's not easy to hold that posture, especially if you've been disrespected many times. The memories linger. The times you were mocked, the moments you were abandoned, the looks that tried to lower your worth. But remember this, you don't need to heal every old wound before you start standing tall today. You just need to decide, I will no longer bend for those who fail to see my worth. And then, something powerful happens. The higher you lift your head, the less you feel hurt. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you no longer receive those attacks at the same level. When you elevate your inner stance, disrespect falls outside your reach. It no longer lands where you live. No one can maintain a strong posture forever, unless they know what they're protecting. And what you're protecting isn't just appearance. It's something far greater. Your dignity. The dignity of someone who doesn't bow to please, who doesn't bow just to survive, who only bows when truly grateful, who stays silent to keep their inner peace intact. If you're still here, I believe you're choosing a different way of living, a way of life that doesn't shout back, but causes others to adjust how they behave because they see someone different from before, someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to be understood to hold on to self-respect. And once you learn how to walk with your head held high, you no longer wait for others to respect you, because you've already given that respect to yourself. In your walk, in your eyes, in your silence, in your boundaries. In the final part, I'll help you tie everything together. Not so you can handle people who disrespect you, but so you can become the kind of person who no longer gets pulled into that energy. We'll revisit all 5 strategies, and I'll leave you with a gentle reminder for a more grounded, dignified, and peaceful life. You've walked with me through a journey that wasn't easy, from silent looks to silence with power, from stopping explanations to setting boundaries, from a timid posture to a stance that no longer bends, not to become someone stronger than others, but to become someone who's no longer controlled by others. I don't know how many times you've been hurt. I don't know who first made you doubt your worth. Maybe it was a family member. Maybe it was a relationship you thought would last forever. Maybe it was a co-worker, an ex, a teacher, or maybe it was your former self, the one who always wanted to be understood, the one who longed to be accepted, the one who tried to hold on to every relationship, even those that lacked respect. But if you've made it this far, I believe you're no longer willing to live that way. You no longer want to smile when someone belittles you. You no longer want to explain yourself to people who don't care to listen. You no longer want to hold on to someone at the cost of losing yourself. You're not who you used to be. And maybe nothing dramatic will happen after this video. No one will suddenly apologize. No one will instantly change their attitude. There will be no applause for your silence. No medals handed out for protecting your boundaries. But something quiet will shift. And it's more important than all the rest. You've started to respect yourself. Seriously. You've come to understand silence isn't weakness. Kindness doesn't mean enduring abuse. Not everyone close to you deserves to stay close. You don't owe everyone an answer, and you don't need to prove yourself to anyone who disrespects you. You don't have to win over them. You just have to not lose yourself. And you know what? From the moment you choose to reserve your energy for yourself, the world begins to feel different. No noisy, no drama, no grand declarations, just a quieter, firmer, calmer version of you. The ones who used to disrespect you can't find the same weak spot anymore. Those who tried to provoke lose interest when you don't react. Those waiting for you to bend find you no longer predictable, and you feel lighter, as if you finally set down a backpack that was never yours to carry. If I had to sum up the 5 key lessons of this journey, I'd say it like this: a silent gaze is your strongest message when you refuse to play someone else's game. Well-timed silence is how you protect your energy and avoid chaos. Stopping explanations is when you choose to affirm your worth rather than seek permission to live. Creating distance is how you show self-love in the face of unhealthy connections. Holding your head high is your quiet but unwavering declaration: I know who I am. You don't need to do all of this today. You just need to recognize one thing: it's time to stop living the old way. And maybe the first step is just to pause. Ask yourself, is there someone close to me who makes me shrink? Is there a relationship that always forces me to tense up? Am I constantly convincing myself, just a little more patience and it'll be okay? If the answer is yes, then you're already seeing clearly. And when you see clearly, you'll know what to do. Not to retaliate, not to prove anything, but to step away, stand tall, and protect the clarity within you. One day, someone will look at you and say, I don't know why, but you feel different. You don't seem as easily shaken anymore. You're quiet, but somehow it makes me rethink my own tone. And you'll just smile, quietly, and walk away. Not because you're above them, but because you're no longer below where you used to be. This is the final message I want to leave you with. You don't need to react to be respected. You just need to stay grounded, so you don't lose respect for yourself. When you live like that, you no longer need to deal with people who disrespect you, because your very energy will filter them out of your life. If you're still here by this final moment, I know something in you has been awakened. That part is whispering, I want a different life. A life where I no longer bow. A life where I no longer endure. A life where I'm no longer someone people can easily control. And if that's the case, let me say one simple thing. You deserve it. If this journey touched something inside you, share it. Not to promote a good video, but so that someone, like you, quietly suffering, might find their posture again, steady, clear, and no longer easily disrespected. If fate allows, we'll meet again in another video where we learn to hold peace without having to fight for it, where we learn to love ourselves without needing anyone's approval. But for now, take that step. Walk, steady, slow, and full of self-respect.